Hey Leela and Shirisi, I'm just recording this quick video to talk a little bit about the assignments that are coming up and make sure that we get a clear understanding of what's happening here. This class is designed to be practical. You're actually developing a course here. And you're doing it in stages by first developing outcomes, then assessments, then rubrics, and then finally putting it all together for the final course design. So when you would do these assignments, I would expect to see practical examples. This rubric that you're creating is going to be a rubric, or actually 3 rubrics for the assessments that you previously developed. Now, the idea is that a rubric show development and be able to be clear to the student what they're doing. Oftentimes, a mistake that people make is making the rubric too simple so that it's so black and white that students may say, well, I did half of what you said, so why are you giving me 0 points? Why am I below standard? I did what you said, I just didn't do it well. So the students need to understand at each level what the performance means. So I want to give an example from the rubric actually for this assignment. So now you're looking at this rubric. The criteria for the rubric, that's the things across the top. They need to be clear, make sense, and be appropriately distinct. So, you want, it needs to be clear what the different levels mean. Not just as far as scoring, but as far as like, what is it in their developmental area do they need? Some classes, like for example, maybe a volunteer class or a class where there's no grades, the rubric could just be below standard, approaching at, or exceeds. If there's going to be points attached to it, you want to also just demonstrate what those points are. At CityU, we all know that passing is an 86.25. So at standard begins where a student would be passing, would be doing, well, actually not passing, but doing well. So they'd be at standard at an 86.25 or a 3.0 according to CityU's grading scale. But then approaching standard would be below that, and a student at a graduate level can pass with a 2.0. So somewhere in this approaching standard, you would be technically not passing anymore. And then below standard, obviously, is they're not doing a good job. This would be, on a standard scale, this would be A, B, C, D, or F. So each criteria here is undefined enough to apply to different situations, but defined enough so the student knows what the expectation is. So you don't want this to be a 0. The student did not do the assignment, so there was no criteria. You don't want to do that, because if that is the case, the student's going to get a 0 because they didn't do the assignment. That's clear already from that. So the below standard needs to be, what is it if it is not done correctly? And for example, if you're going to have a student do define 2 words, for example, or if you're going to have a student demonstrate their skill of something, you want to make sure that if it's a number like 2 words or 3 words or get 3 right answers on a test kind of thing, you don't want to say the student below standard is the student only got 1 of the 3, and then approaching standard is 2 of the 3, and then at standard is 3 of the 3, because there could be all different kinds of things in between there. It may be true that if they only presented 1 of the 3, they would be below standard. So you could put that in the criteria. However, you also want to have more, because what if they do all 3, but what if they do all 3 really badly? Or what if they do 2 of the 3 and then they don't do those well? Or they do 1.5 and then they do 2 other things that are completely wrong for the assignment. The idea is that you want to think about all the options that would be considered below standard by you if you were looking at this and grading it. That's the important thing. It's like, what is going to be below standard? What is that going to look like? All aspects of what that looks like. You want to have all those aspects. Now, back to the assignment. Your final assignment is going to be a full course design, and you're going to create a full course for the topic that you've been working on, and you're going to have an introduction that is going to describe the student group that you're going to be looking at. Who are they? And what's the context? What are the outcomes desired by that program? So For example, if you're doing, Leela, you're doing ESL, well, who are you doing it for? What do they want? Are you doing it for the students themselves? What are those students' goals? Are you doing it for a community college or for some other organization? What are their goals? What do they want from you? And then what course design model or curriculum development model are you using to measure them? So what is the best curriculum design to use for ESL, or what's the best design to use for a business class? What kind of curriculum development process are you going through? Then you're going to create a syllabus. Now, a syllabus, you can look at the syllabus from this class and see the kind of things that are included in the syllabus. Typically, you have the title, course description, course learning outcomes, assessments with rubrics, and then any policies, including ethical policies. You need an attendance policy. You need a policy about plagiarism. You need a policy about cheating. Any policy that you think is going to be important, you need to look at add that. You can look at examples from other programs that do the same thing that you want to do. What do business programs typically have as their policies? What do ESL programs typically have as their policies? Try to find some syllabi online and look at those policies. And then you're going to have lesson plans. Now, lesson plans are going to be what an actual session would look like. Now, you only need to do 2 of these. So you want to basically look at what is the focus of the learning, what experiences the students will have, what accommodations will you have for students who may have developmental needs or other needs, like what if a student can't see well, or what if they can't hear well? What are you going to do in that situation? Assessment strategies, and then the resources that you would need for that day of class. So if you're designing a training, then you may just do 1 of the training sessions. If you're designing a class, then you just do 1 day of the class. Like, what would 1 learning session look like? And then you want to do at least 2 of those. So that we can understand kind of what the experience would look like for the student in that class. So if you have any questions, please reach out and let me know. Hopefully this will be helpful. Have a great weekend.